Thank you everyone for getting up so early on this beautiful morning. My name is Phil Hartley and I'm here at the honour to host the session today. So first of all, welcome to the 7th in the series of our Digital Insights series. And this one is around blockchain and it's called Back to the Future, partly because we ran an initial one of these almost a year ago. So we'll revisit and refocus on the potential transformative impacts of blockchain and its progress over the last year. Everyone has some breakfast, I hope. Everyone's got drinks. And if you need the exits, they're right there. And the facilities are right by the lifts. So you go past the lifts and there you'll find the facilities. That's my polite word. So I'd like to commence by telling a little bit, two anecdotes, which are quite personal. I hope you'll find that to be of interest, which I think have relevancy for today. As I said, a year ago, Jason Potts from RMIT rocked our civilized world by letting us know that our society was on the verge of a radical change driven by a technology called blockchain. If you would like to see that particular speech, you can go to our YouTube site and have a look there. Well, since we've had that speech, I've been in a bit of a glazed trance because I've been sitting there imagining, what if all my data was mine to control? What if I could enable others to have and access my data under my control? And what if I had organizations sign my digital contract to access my data? And what if I could trust others and be trusted in return? Now, I went on this journey in my head because a few years ago, I had to get a copy of my marriage certificate from the Copenhagen registry offices where I got married. But I'd lost it, so I had to go and get a copy. To do that, I had to have a copy of my British birth certificate, which had also been lost. It gets a bit more complicated. So, to get my British birth certificate from Australia is slightly, or to get it in the first place is complex. To get it out of Australia is quite precarious, particularly when your driver's license from Victoria has my name Philip spelt with 2 L's, and my passport has my name spelled with 1 L. And the way I had to resolve this was I had to send my Australian citizenship certificate to the British registry office so they could release my British birth certificate. My name is Philip Irony Hartley. What a waste of time. If I had that data, if I had access to it, none of that would have happened. So that's my first little piece. I think in all that confusion, what I recognized was that my identity is not mine to give in this world, but it is mine to prove to those who hold my identity. And this seems completely at odds with today's social norms. I'm on Facebook, therefore I am. It's as simple as that. So there's one use case. The second anecdote is around the formation, if you wish, of technology and the evolution and transformation through evolution of technology. In 1981, I worked as a graduate in the Science and Engineering Research Council in Harwell in the UK. The Research Council was known for splitting the atom, bouncing lasers off the moon, and was at the forefront of thinking of fusion technology, atomic fusion. I was an earring-adorned, anemic ex-punk working with a group of highly intelligent, corduroy trouser-wearing, pipe-smoking intellectuals. This was a heady mix of massive professional intelligence supported by a dropout adolescent with dyed blonde hair. However, this team was planning the first X25 packet switching network in the UK. And it was designed to connect up with universities and research councils to share information. When it launched in 1984, its connection speeds were 9.6 kilobits per second. It was seen as a massive technical step forward, but its economic value was unknown. Actually, sending packets of data by post was cheaper and more reliable. The network was called JANET, which is a shocking name, means Joint Area Network, and was one of the first, or one of the evolutionary steps in the formation of the internet. The point I'm clumsily trying to make is not that I am one of the forefathers of the internet, far from it. I was about as valuable as a paper shredder, to be honest. The point is that JANET, when it first came, was slow, cumbersome, it required expensive technology to make it work, and it's only available to the few, not the many. But it was one of the stepping stones of many to the evolution of our digital age. Does this sound familiar when we think about blockchain? Are we on an early blockchain stepping stone? And will the version of the blockchain we have today evolve into a more society transforming technology? So just think this through when Jason starts to speak. If it's true that it is going to be transformative, then given its potential power to change and to change the institutions that we have inherently grown to live with, government, banks, health, law, etc., then it has the ability to change the very fabric of our society. And that is something we should be prepared for. Today, we are fortunate once again to have Jason Potts, the Director of Blockchain Innovation Hub at RMIT, to join us. Jason is a technology economist by trade. He is focused on blockchain because he sees the potential for this technology to deliver a step change in how our society will function. And he's an evangelist. So he's taken the message of blockchain's transformative power around the world, literally. Actually, you should meet the APT guys because they might give you a discount on your flights. Please welcome Jason to the stage, everybody.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Phil. Hello. Thank you all for inviting me here. This is fantastic. I'm really pleased you all turned up to talk about this. As Phil mentioned, I sort of have a position on this. I run a research centre that's at RMIT University, and there's a team of about 10 core researchers. We study blockchain, and we're not computer scientists. We're not mathematicians. We're economists mostly, and political scientists. And the reason the university set this research centre up, the reason we lobbied for the foundation of this, is we do believe this is going to be a transforming technology. That we are at the sort of early stages of the internet again with this technology. We see blockchain technology is the next generation of the internet, but interestingly, it's actually more than that. It's a technology that's built on the internet, but what it does is it completes the internet revolution. And what this enables us to do is what the internet gave us was, this started back in the 1950s and 60s. It gave us global communication. It enabled us to digitize communication networks upon which we built a whole lot of things, right? But everything that was built, up to and including social media, was all communications technology. There are a few things that were missing from that, a few things that were difficult to build in. And these include things like money, contracts, organizations, registries. A whole lot of just fundamental building blocks of economies were still missing from this vision of the internet as a communication system. And that's what has just happened now, is we've got a new blockchain technology is the next generation of the internet, but it is also the first digital native way to rebuild economies on the internet. And that's what I want to talk through, how we're going with that progress and why that's significant. So what we've actually got here is a 10-year technology and a 10,000-year technology converging. So the 10-year technology is blockchain. That started 10 years ago with Satoshi Nakamoto. We still don't know who that person or they are. I think it's 4 people, one of whom is dead. But 10 years ago, Satoshi Nakamoto invented Bitcoin, and Bitcoin was the world's first cryptocurrency. And a cryptocurrency is a digital money that works. The digital money on the internet that doesn't rely on a central party or a bank or some sort of third-party intermediary to validate it. Now, we've had digital money before. Visa and MasterCard and Diners Card were the first ones. They worked. They were phenomenally profitable, but they still relied on Visa and MasterCard. You still had to have those big, global, highly profitable organizations running that. Next revolution with that was more or less PayPal, which sort of figured out how to do. Visa was merchant-facing, PayPal was internet-based. Right? So you've still got that, but you've still got PayPal. You've still got a company doing that. Bitcoin was the first attempt to actually basically build PayPal without PayPal. So it's all protocol based. It's on the internet. There's no sort of company behind it. It's just you just use it. That's a cryptocurrency. And the magic behind how a cryptocurrency works and how was it able to do that thing is blockchain. Right? So blockchain is the technology behind cryptocurrencies. It's a internet protocol, and it's open source software. That was what was invented. And what it enables is it's a combination of different technologies. It's peer-to-peer networking, like email. It's cryptography. It's a append-only database, which for any database engineers in the room is the worst possible way to build a database. It's slow, it's expensive, it's phenomenally secure. It's the most secure thing that humans have ever built, and that's the quality that we like about it. Is it's a way to have a shared database that any computer around the world can join just by using the protocol, can share information on that database to move digital information around. Right? That's what blockchain is. It's an internet protocol for sharing databases. The reason it was invented was to solve the problem of how do we put digital money on the internet without requiring a company behind it. But it turned, and that was the whole reason. Right? So a bunch of crypto anarchists from the dark web invented this digital money to try and bring down governments, and to do so they had to invent blockchain. We don't sort of worry no one sort of looks at this and go, well, look at the crypto anarchist technology that's been invented to bring down governments. What they're saying is, wow, we've got a whole new way to do data on the internet with which we can build new economies. And that's what's happened in the past 10 years, is that we've gone from this technology to put money on the internet to realizing that the technology behind that was just a way to build shared databases. So I wonder what else we can put in those shared databases was the next step. And about 5 years ago, a then 19-year-old Canadian prodigy thought, you know what else is made of digital data? Software. This was the beginning of Ethereum. Ethereum was the ability to put code into those things. Instead of moving digital money around, we're now moving digital code. Once we've got digital code, this was the technology that enabled us to build smart contracts. Smart contracts are the technology behind things like ICOs and the ability to build organizations in this space. So in an incredibly rapid amount of time, and really we're only about 3 years deep in that latest iteration, when we realized it wasn't just money, it was software. It wasn't just software, it was everything you can build with software. And everything you can build with software is all of the stuff that we're sort of seeing as the vast opportunity behind blockchain technology. So that's the sort of the 10-year backstory behind this. We went from crypto anarchists putting digital money on the internet to a bunch of people realizing that if you can do that, you can do other things. These other things are far more interesting than money. We've still got money on the internet. It's just that was the experimental step one. The second part of this story is the 10,000-year story. And what we've realized is that what we're building there was, the full name of blockchain is digital ledger technology. And what ledgers are just records of social truth, right? Ways of recording facts. Facts like Phil's identity. Who is that person? Facts like who owns this bit of land, who owns this house, and when we undergo a transaction, who now owns it. Who is the counterparty to this contract? So it's essentially just registry ledger information that for 10,000 years has always been a relatively unchanging, stable technology we think of as just a bookkeeping. Right? It's accounting technology. That accounting technology of bookkeeping and just keeping track of all of these social facts that we need to build economies on has traditionally been the responsibility of churches, then village elders, then companies. The sort of early merchant banks coming out of Venice basically were just bookkeepers who extended those services to others. The joint stock company. Governments eventually took over these roles. which enabled us to build nation states. Right? Companies, nation states, governments, these are the governance mechanisms we have used to control books. And if you have high quality institutional governance mechanisms for controlling books, you can build successful economies on that. Right? That's the biggest lesson of history. Right? 10,000 years, that's how we've been doing it. Centralized books. We don't even call them that anymore. We just call them companies or banks or governments. Right? Those are the words we use to describe that. So this sort of 10,000 year story of what economies are, and this 10-year story of a bunch of crypto hackers inventing new money, and then someone realizing if we can do that, we can do the other thing, converge with this idea, we've got a new technology for building facts, socially agreed upon facts. And that's blockchain. Right, that's the significance behind what just happened. That's the reason we've set up a research center as a bunch of economists going, I wonder what's going to happen with this technology. Not sure yet, but something significant is happening. We're 10 years deep, really we're 5 years deep, properly we're about 2 or 3 years deep in terms of experimentation in this. This is a very new technology. Mostly what we're seeing is proof of concepts and experiments around it. And that's the technology of ledgers. Two very separate things, one coming out of computer science and dark web hacking, the other one coming out of the foundations of how we build economies. What it's given us then, as this is where we're up to now, is blockchain is cryptocurrencies, which as I've described is a protocol-based peer-to-peer way to move digital information. And if we point to it and we all agree that that digital information refers to a money, then it's a cryptocurrency. If it's referring to who owns this bit of land, now it's a property title on blockchain. But what we've got is cryptocurrencies. We've got wallets have now been rebuilt. Wallets are essentially just mobile apps that we use to interact with blockchains. We've got smart contracts. That was the idea of smart contracts is actually about 20 years old. The instantiation of them actually working is 5 years old. Smart contracts enable us to make to basically schedule in payments that enable me to make a promise to you, and I'm going to do a thing written into a smart contract. Now, if I do that to you in a previous generation of technologies, you'd go, all right, fine, we'll need to lawyer up and paper this up, and we'll need to do monitoring, and we'll need to incur a whole lot of costs to ensure that my promise to you is executed and validated and so on. That's what smart contracts do, is that they may enable me to make a promise to you and it's just done. It's inside, it's going to happen. That's what the blockchain is doing, using exactly the same technology as it is using to move cryptocurrencies around. So this is sometimes called a trustless technology, but that's slightly the wrong way to think about it. This is a technology that has phenomenally lowered the cost of trusting promises. I can make a promise to you. That promise can be one half of an insurance contract. That promise could be, so we can start to rebuild financial instruments with this. We've got, if we can do registries, who is that person? Who owns this land? What are the contracts connecting this person to this land to a series of conditions? What we can start to do is we can start to build not only forward markets, which is what fintech is doing largely with this space, it's starting to sort of think through implications for insurance and finance and so on. But this is peer-to-peer finance. This is not you and me contracting, having a third party to organize it for us. This is us doing it directly peer-to-peer. The same way that when we send email, we don't send it to the email company and they'll have it redelivered to you. We just, if I'm using the protocol and you're using the protocol, we can communicate. Right? This is, if I'm using the protocol and you're using the protocol, I can send you value. I can make promises to you in the future that will be executed, and you know that. So this notion of sort of peer-to-peer commerce and trading and so on. This is the revolution. This is what's just happened. We're still experimenting with what we can do with this and what we can build on this, but that's kind of where we're up to now. Now, the word we're using for this now is Web3. I sort of see this as part of Industry 4.0. And if you think of Industry 4.0 as a cluster of technologies, AI and 5G and 3D printing and so on and so on, what do they all have in common? They're all technologies that facilitate autonomy. They enable the machines to be autonomous. They enable, what is blockchain? Blockchain is the economic infrastructural layer that facilitates autonomy of those machines and so on. It enables the machines to make payments to other machines. It enables the machines to identify other machines because it enables the humans to identify the machines. So it's just basically this layer of services that we've currently extended to humans, identity, voting rights, and all these other sort of ledger type entries. We can now extend that out far more broadly and automate that process. Right? This is blockchain is the economic layer was the contracting layer in Industry 4.0. So that's the technology that have come together. This is the key technologies that blockchain is built of. Again, just the thing I'm emphasizing here is that these are commercial technologies. They're the technologies that we have for trading. This is not sort of this is economic infrastructure. That this technology is. Now the point of that is, don't be surprised if you don't see this in shops. This isn't a consumer-facing technology. This is infrastructural back-office technology that is augmenting the stuff that you can't see anyway already. You can't see all of the ledgers underneath everything. They're just there. This is what blockchain is doing. It's an infrastructural technology. All right, so what? What does this do? What it does is it changes not so much what's in the economy. It doesn't mean there's new industries there now that weren't there before. There's like space travel or plastics or whatever. Still got the same economy in terms of what's in it. What happens is it looks different. It'll be structurally different. And there's basically three ways it'll be structurally different. One is this peer-to-peer way. At the moment, we're used to everything we do is intermediated through something else. Those something else's are companies or markets or sort of platforms. What blockchain does is it facilitates a peer-to-peer economy. It enables person or machine to trade, contract directly with other person or machine without going via a third party. Now the reason you had that third party was to verify the ledger. Right? The reason I can't trade with you directly with my is what a bank is doing is going, yep, you've got the money. Yep, now it's there with them. They're modifying the ledger. Right? What a government's doing when land is sold is like, yep, it's your land. Yep, you have title to sell it. Yep, now it's yours. Right? They're modifying the ledger. We've got a new technology for enabling us to peer-to-peer directly facilitate that type of trade. Now the basic prediction here as an economist is if we've lowered the cost of doing a thing, expect to see a lot more of the thing. Right? Demand curve slope downwards. If we've lowered the cost of transactions for contracting and trade, expect to see a lot more transacting, contracting, and trade. So our basic prediction of what this technology brings is not sort of a new consumer market or sort of an increase in GDP in the sense of now there's more stuff in the economy. What it predicts is there'll be a lot more trade in the economy. A lot of things that were previously too expensive to trade because it was hard to figure out who owned what and you couldn't find a counterparty and you had to, it's not worth getting lawyers involved to do the thing, let's just not do the thing. What we're likely to see now is just a vast increase in trade. That will translate into an increase in wealth, just simply because that's where wealth comes from. We see this as globalization 2.0. We see this as the next big kick-up in global trade. Just simply because it's relatively easy to trade within a country, it's hard to trade across countries. We still do it where it's valuable, but there's a lot of stuff we don't do. So call it disintermediation in markets. Right? How economies will look different is a lot of big centralized firms that are sitting in the middle of this. Now, to a first approximation, these are some of the just cornerstones of modern capitalism. Big banks, big insurance companies, big trading platforms, et cetera, et cetera. We absolutely need, it's those things that will be decentralized. And not in the sense that they go away, it's that they'll start probably just doing a lot more work in that space. So the economy becomes flatter, and far more barriers to globalization come down. Why? Because a lot of places and countries are hard to trade with because their ledgers are bad. Now, that's not the word we use. The word we use is their institutions are horrible, or their governments are corrupt, or their money doesn't work very well, or their banks are slow. Their ledgers are bad. We can just simply do an end run around that. We don't have to reform them. We just build new ledgers. So what that means is that this is, we're looking at Africa, we're looking at India, we're looking at places like that that are just that just lack high quality economic infrastructure. New technology to fix that. So this is part of global trade and development story. And again, that's the reason we're interested in this as economists. De-hierarchicalization. You heard that word here first. De-hierarchicalization. Yeah. So disintermediation. Disintermediation is what happens to markets. They become peer-to-peer, not intermediated. De-hierarchicalization is, if we can do all of this stuff with smart contracts, a lot of what firms are doing is just monitoring their employees. It's just monitoring and verification and auditing and just checking that the thing that you said would happen happened. These are just costs we just have, and we have big firms because big firms are efficient at capital, at taking on large projects. There's a reason we have large firms, but one of the things about large firms is they're expensive to run. Some of the processes that we've had to incur costs monitoring, and a lot of this is just administration costs. I'm in a university, and a large part of what we do is just paperwork. Yes, the thing happened. Yes, the student is who they say they are. Yes, they did the thing. Yes, they can sit in that. Just that kind of administrative paper. It's absolutely essential. It's updating the ledger. Has to be done. But we've got a new technology for doing that now. And there's implications for jobs, but there's also phenomenal implications for efficiency and productivity. De-hierarchicalization. These big firms that are necessary to be big for finance and capital reasons might not need to be big for administrative efficiency reasons. Not clear what this will look like. How much, what is there? How do I estimate what that number, if we can replace that technology with this technology, what do we gain? Our estimate, we did a study of this earlier in the year, is we think right now the global economy is spending about 35% of everything on these costs of verification, administration, just checking, just ledger updating, and costs of dealing with ledgers. Now, we don't think of those costs, we think of them as entire professions. So we estimated this by going through each profession in the US occupational census and estimating what fraction each job did of that, and 35%. In Australia, that's $350 billion. Right, it's huge. Now, that's not the market size of the blockchain, but that's the point is that's what this is potentially cutting into. We've never had an alternative technology to potentially substitute some of this out. The point of that number is not that it's 35% rather than 37%. It's that it's about a third of the economy, not 1% of the economy, but a third. So there's a huge potential gain there to have. This is the source of our sense of this will be transformative in terms of value creation. We can cut into that. All right. So a flatter economy is what this looks like. Continuing a long trend of economic flattening. This one kicks it up on a global scale. So what is this? All right. So this is new economic infrastructure. That's what this technology is. It's new economic infrastructure that will cut, and this is why this isn't just a fintech thing. This is a new economic infrastructure. Wherever there are ledgers, this is coming. And it'll roll out across different sectors and present opportunities more or less in proportion to the extent to which it is blocked or invested in. This is not there are some sectors this will be relevant to and others that it's not. This is everything. It's just a matter of sort of seeing the opportunities. Some sectors are better protected on this, or some have reason to so on. So we're seeing a lot of the fintech space has broadly been the first space to move, just because that was where it was invented. It was a new money, and then it was new financial contract. So it started there. But I'll talk soon about where the real progress is happening. The other thing, so this is new economic infrastructure. The other thing that's new and different here is what this does is it means that this distinction between firms, markets, and industries, which is the way we've conventionally organized our thinking and administration of economy. We now have to pay far more attention to another word that is ecosystems and platforms. What this does is this builds an ecosystem or a platform economy. And what blockchain is basically a technology to enable shared databases amongst what? Anything that wants to trade. Right? So if we think of this as a payments platform, then it's a payments platform. It's not a sector, it's a payments platform for what it wants to trade. If we think of it as a supply chain, it's a series of as a platform to enable to go from production to, not to move the thing, but to move all of the contracting and information about the thing all the way through to where it needs to get to. Right? That's not necessarily, again, an industry, that's a supply chain. But it's a supply chain that has a possible single technology to link it all together, rather than, and now it crossed a border, and now it's on a truck, and now it's who knows what companies run. So ecosystems and platforms are basically the new building block of economies, not nations and industries. With this, that's what this infrastructural technology does, is it? So, as economists, we don't measure economies like that. We measure them by nation state, how big, GDP, or industry, sector, how much, how many firms. So the way we just account for economies is going to shift. We don't even really have a word for what this new thing is. Once upon a time, we would have called this an empire. That's a political word, but that's kind of what it is. It's an empire is a trading group of people all using the same law or money or whatever, right? So this is what shifts. The other sort of point on this is just to, before we pass on, this is all being privately built. This is normally infrastructure. Trading infrastructure is built by, that's literally what governments do. You pay taxes, they build the infrastructure, that's the deal. Almost all of this, right from the start, is being built in the private sector. It's being built by the crypto foundations, so the initial Bitcoin, Ethereum, Neo, EOS, and so on, these cryptocurrencies, they're building the infrastructure. And they're building it because they want you to use it. And they want you to use it for the same reason the Roman Empire built roads. They want everything to come back to them. Right? So the cryptocurrencies are building this infrastructure. If any of you are involved in any large tech companies, you'll know that you're also building it as well. IBM is probably leading it in the world right now. Microsoft is pretty close behind. All of the big consultancies, Accenture and PwC and Deloitte and so on, are also building this out. Some of it has broken cover, some of it hasn't. But we've got cities building it. Dubai and Singapore are probably the leading places in the world right now that are building this infrastructure. They're built, Estonia, a few other sort of countries. Every single tax haven is doing this as well. So Gibraltar, Isle of Man, Mauritius, they're sort of seeing the opportunity there because this is their business, right? They're building global regulatory infrastructure to export to other places. They're building platforms, ledger platforms. So what we've got here is we've got this interesting thing where we've got new global trading infrastructure being rapidly built, and by rapidly I mean in the past 4 years, from nothing to sort of global spanning experimental infrastructure, being competitively built by foundations, companies, governments are just waking up to this, that this is actually an opportunity for them and not a thing to try and block. But that's what we've got going on, right? We haven't seen something like this. Last time we saw something like this wasn't really even the building out of the internet and communications infrastructure. A better metaphor would be the railroads, or the railroads of empire. That sort of building out of the courts and the roads and so on. That's what's going on. And it's going on for the same reason, to build trading empires that will create value for that which builds the infrastructure. That's the play, not building a product that you put in a box and sell on a shelf. So I think that's part of what's confused a lot of people around what this tech is, because we don't see this sort of tech, we don't see this sort of thing very often. It hasn't happened in our lifetimes. This is the first time. And we're still, this wasn't what it was intended to be either. It was intended to be, dark internet money to overthrow governments. It's turned out to be the opposite. All right. So where are we? So it's 2018. This is the fastest moving technology we've ever seen. 1 year in this space is sort of 10 years in every other sort of space. So when I spoke to you last year, a bunch of things didn't exist. Last year we were at the early stages of a bubble. Fortunately, mercifully, that has collapsed. That's the best thing that's ever happened. It was creating scams. Most of them have been flushed out now. That's the upside. The ICO fast way to raise money thing is we're mercifully behind that. Most of the capital that's coming into the space is coming in as venture capital now, as nature intended. We're seeing development of stablecoins. So one of the huge problems that we've had with cryptocurrencies is wild volatility. Part of that volatility is completely natural. Phenomenal new technology, we have no idea what it's going to look like. How do you price it? No one knows. It's a winner-take-all sort of situation that we're looking at. You can't there's no sort of backing behind it in terms of, look at this quality of teams, this prospect of owning a platform. That's your valuation metric. But that makes it really horrible as a currency. So stable coins are a new thing. They seem to kind of work. There's been a few spectacular blow-ups, but we think we've got digital money that we can now peg. And again, that's an advance in the technology. We did the same thing back in the early 20th century by creating baskets of currencies to stabilize exchange rates. We can do this. We just did. Right? So the scaling part of this, at the moment, the current generation of technology cannot withstand the weight we want to put on it. If we do try and move the entire global economy to it, it will just get squashed. It can withstand a tiny fraction of that. That is being engineered to be solved. Most of the people I talk to are pretty confident this will be solved. Ethereum's developing a whole new sharding architecture to rebuild this. But we're seeing a technology that the first generation of it has been born and then collapsed, and second generation and third generations are being rapidly built. Normally that's a multi-decade process. We're doing this in months. So it's an incredibly rapidly evolving infrastructural architectural technology. Interoperability is the other big thing that's new. What that means is how does one platform talk to another platform? At the moment, these are separate continents. The Roman Empire can't communicate with the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Still true in blockchain now, but we've got the technology at an experimental scale to do what are called cross-chain atomic swaps, to basically take a thing on one chain and move it to something on another chain. Right? Again, still experimental, but once we can do that, that's how we join them all up. And the significance of that, it's the answer to the question, how many will there be? If we can't do it, there needs to be one. If we can do it, there can be a million, billion, trillion. In the same way, how many companies are in the world doesn't matter. We can move resources between them, right? Same thing with these other things. So all of those are positive experimental developments. I expect check in a year from now, this will be a lot more mature. At the moment we know we can do it. We just don't know how big we can do it. They take off. They still explode, but they don't go to the moon yet. But they take off. Two other things. One, China is huge in this space. That wasn't true a year ago. I was there recently. China's making a huge AI play. You may know about that. Blockchain and AI are very complementary technologies. One is the infrastructure for the other. So we're seeing a huge amount of private investment, as we are in the Bay Area as well. Just half of all the funds in the Bay Area are crypto funds. Same is true in China. And this is a ground-up infrastructure. The reason you're not seeing is that it's all infrastructure that's being built in the back. It has weird names. You won't even know it's there. It's the proposition here is this is a technology, an infrastructural governance regulatory technology that is incredibly easy to export. You can take your rules, hard code them into the platform, and those rules could represent law, and then export that law. If you've been following it, that's the Australian national blockchain play that IBM, Data61, CSIRO, Freehills, and Kingwood Mallison have teamed up to create the Australian national blockchain. And this is a bit of tech for Australia that is designed to create a hybrid legal system of black letter law and the lawyers write the law, and then smart contracts automate. So you can have, we automate the bits of a contract that can be automated, and we leave to the lawyers the bits that can't. The Australian national blockchain is an infrastructure, as a new generation of digital legal infrastructure designed to have smart contracts in it. The initial play is this is good for Australia, we can now do this. But if you can do that, then you ask, well, what happens when two Chinese merchants use this? What you've just done is you've just exported Australian law. You said you're selling your thing, contract to someone else in, say, Singapore, but it will be set, any arbitration will take place in Australia, is the implication. So now we've got a way to take high quality institutions and export those institutions. So there's a few sort of fundamentally new things that were previously, we couldn't do that before, but now this might be the new game. So this is sort of what I mean by we're seeing structural change in the way economies work in this space. Now again, this is very new. So universities are getting into the game. RMIT, we've been leading this, but what we're starting to see all around the world is courses being set up. Students, they want to study this as the next generation technologies. We're starting to see patents emerge in the space. Again, this for a fundamental technological revolution. This was weirdly unpatented. Initial Satoshi Nakamoto didn't patent anything. It was all just pushed into as open source software. We're starting to see patents emerge, and again, this is a lot of the big companies building these platforms are starting to patent in this space. So we're starting to see sort of protections forming in that. We're also starting to see regulation take place. Now that's very welcome. One of the main barriers to investment was regulatory uncertainty. Not good regulations or bad regulations, just no regulations, which made it incredibly risky to invest in this space. So that's sort of where we're up to now. There's been a bunch of technological advances in the underlying infrastructure tech, and we've seen institutional adoption in the sense of taking this on. Governments around the world. Most governments around the world now have policies on this. At RMIT, we've just built the crypto-friendly index, where we've ranked all the APEC countries on measures of crypto-friendliness. We're in Australia about the same as America. Singapore is by far number one in this space. Dubai is sort of next. Korea's reasonably good, and so on. But there's very few countries that don't have stated policies now, even if it's just tax treatment of crypto. So we're starting to see this emerge. So that regulation is happening. The notion of governments that are finding this hard are the big ones. Governments that are finding this easy are the small state, basically the city-states. It's not an accident that Singapore and various cantons in Switzerland are leading this, just simply because they can solve the coordination problem of getting all the different parts of government together and going, we need to agree on this. This is a network technology. It's an interoperability technology. It's one that's not a standalone thing that you can go, the Department of Communications will take care of this. You also need all of the customs, you need all of the sort of legal, just all of the different parts need to coordinate on this, which is why small states have a huge advantage over this, over big states. We're calling that the small state advantage. It may well be permanent, because what's being built and exported are these legal regulatory jurisdictions for trade. And Singapore, Hong Kong, and so on are obviously seeing their role as creating high-quality institutional governance and exporting it to the trading regions. This is the opportunity or the risk for Australia. We're seeing, we met with one of the ministers yesterday to discuss this. The Australian government's very keen to push the welfare system into this space for quite obvious reasons. It's bloated, expensive thing that's basically associated with identity tech plus payments tech. It's a perfect use case. We think that will come, but we actually think there are more powerful use cases for government, and one of them is horizontal fiscal federalism. Basically, interpayments between government, states, and so on. Governments are just large ledgers that don't talk to each other and cause problems. So basically enabling the back office infrastructure of intergovernment payments and so on. That's probably the most significant use case. Governments don't want to do that because they quite enjoy the dysfunction. It serves them well, but it's an opportunity. So Australian national blockchain's coming. We're starting to see sort of governments declaring these things legal. The other big thing that we're likely to see is registries. Some countries in the world have already moved on this. Famously, Sweden with its land registries has moved. Australian government's got about 50 fundamental registries. These are things like just land titles, but these are company director registries and so on. All of these things could significantly benefit from moving to blockchain technology. This is just really a matter of appetite and willingness to do it, and it'll be the most dysfunctional ones will go first. Probably company registries would be the one I would or directors registries. All right, so that's government. Finally, just a wrap up of what this looks like in the industry sectors. I mentioned fintech. Globally, fintech is the one that has gone first because it is the most obvious one to explore this. At one extreme, you've got just payments and store of value and digital gold and so on. ASX is still on track for a late 2020 or early 2021 shift to a blockchain-inspired platform. We think that the super funds are an obvious next movement in this space, but again, this is a competition will drive that. It's a thing. The big one for us, though, is supply chains. This is by far the biggest global use case, and if nothing happens in this space but a shift in moving supply chains to blockchains, it will be well done. This will be a significant revolution in the world. The logic of it is reasonably straightforward. It's just two things move with supply chains: the thing, the service, the good. And over the long 20th century, the cost of doing that has dramatically fallen. It's containerization in ports and digital efficiencies, and we really can't squeeze much more productivity out of the physical movement of the thing. What has happened, though, is at the same time, the cost of moving the information with the thing has just continually increased and will continue to increase, because that information is valuable. Consumers want to know more about what happened. We want to have more and more sort of cross-validation of, is it compliant with labor laws and trade treaties and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We want more information in our global supply chains. It's just information is costly because every time something moves, every time it transacts, off a truck, off a truck, changing between companies, all the information has to be, yep, that's true. Yep, I agree, it's true. Right? That matching of that verification and auditing and reconciliation and data processing and just matching of ledgers is where the cost is. And that's the part that's growing in cost. This is the main barrier to global trade and globalization. It's not better physical infrastructure, it's better information infrastructure. That problem that's the future, right? That's the next, that's the thing we're staring down. So agriculture and primary goods are the first one to move on this. We're seeing a lot of startup investment. Some of you may be well be familiar with this. This is a huge win for Australia. Australia is a country that produces high quality products that unfortunately turn into commodities, because that's how global trade infrastructure works, is that we take a high quality object and then we commodify it. The minute you commodify it, you receive world price. You don't receive the price of the actual thing that was there. So huge advantage for Australia. This technology could be an enormous boost for regional Australia, for wine industries, for anything where you're selling something where you want to prove at low cost that the thing is the thing that you say it is. Picture next to the farmer with the whatever it is. This is not just adding information for the final consumer. This is also combating fraud. This is also doing a whole lot of things to ensure high quality, to ensure that which produces the value receives the payment for that value. At the moment, the way supply chains work is the opposite. That which certifies it at the end by putting a brand name on it and going, this is quality, they capture the value, and everyone else gets commodity price. So supply chains in agriculture and primary goods is the first step, but then you extend it out to advanced manufacturing. Pharmaceuticals and aircraft parts. And why is that significant? 3D printing is the answer. Where you need to prove that the 3D printed medical implant that's about to go in you is the real thing, when you really, really care about that. So this also works at the high-end manufacturing end. Now, that's the significance of that is coming, and that comes with Industry 4.0 in that space. The other spaces, and just as a quick wrap up on this, we're seeing emergence of prop tech, ability to basically create sort of new property rights and fractional ownership and so on and so on. There's a bit of interest in that. It's not the most exciting thing, but we're starting to see that. We're seeing movement in utilities and sort of water markets on blockchain and so on. The significance of that is that those things work pretty well, but if you're a human trading with them. They don't work very well if you're a machine. So again, next generation of AI-driven robotic sort of irrigation systems that want to buy water permits on a sort of minute-by-minute basis rather than a season-by-season basis. So again, just investment in other tech is sort of being constrained by the way in which the registries and markets work for a bunch of utilities. Australia's Power Ledger is doing very well in this space globally. So utilities markets broadly are a large space. Again, early days, but Australia's got some very, very good companies in this space. Civic Ledger and Power Ledger and Everledger and so on are doing work. The final thing I'll mention is the one that I think is the sleeper in this space is data markets. One of the things that we don't have registries for and haven't had registries for 10,000 years but suddenly can, that is a public good that we just deal with as a problem and a cost to deal with through regulation and privacy laws and so on, but we know is phenomenally valuable, is data. Right? More and more, as industries become more and more data intensive, finance and health and social media and so on are that. And with every passing day, data becomes more a control and management and of data is more part of what the industry is. Blockchain is a technology to create, and this is the weird thing, but once you see it, it's obvious, to create property rights in data. At the moment, data doesn't have property rights. We have to protect it with law, and that's how we economically manage data. That which harvests the data owns the data is the current default rule. So in social media, that's why Google owns your data. It's not your data, it's theirs. they can be not evil and so on, and sort of offer to behave nicely with it, but so on. In the health sector, it's your health records are not your health records. They are the hospital's records, the doctor's records, that which gathers the data, owns the data, and that's for good reasons. That's because historically we needed it to look like that to create efficiencies in terms of handling of it. But what we then needed to do was to put a whole lot of law and regulation and constraints and ethical barriers and certifications to ensure that no abuse happened of that. So with Box, now the price we paid for that is innovation. It's made innovation in that space just really difficult, especially when data is involved, because the entire system was designed to ensure that no one ever did anything innovative with the data, because that was the deal. You can have it, you just have to behave well with it. Same thing in finance, same thing with, so there's a whole lot of things. Now, what's the connection? This is the magical thing. What a cryptocurrency is a box with data in it, right, that you lock. The data refers to the number of coins, but it's just digital data. We realize that they can be long or short, whatever. It's a lockable box that I can send to you and only you can unlock it. What have I just done? I've just built property rights for digital data. Didn't even realize that I thought I was building a cryptocurrency. No, you've just built property rights for data. So what we've now got then is, if we've got a property right for data, what we've got is a market for data. I can sell you the box conditional upon you sending me something back. Or I can permission you to, with smart contracts, to look at some of the box until 3 o'clock and then it's mine back again. Or I can permission you, but not you, to look at it. I can use smart contracts and cryptocurrencies and public key cryptography to create programmable property rights in data. That's a revolution for the health sector. We've never had that, now we do. We're not using it yet because it's still unclear how we will do this, what the legal framework surrounding it is. But what we've just done is we've just created a whole new, not just new class of asset, data markets, or a whole new class of markets, data markets, but a whole new economic infrastructure with which we can rethink industries that are large, expensive, that are increasingly made of data. So, we see supply chains as the big thing right now. But the big one coming is essentially industries that are made of data. And again, with each passing day, more and more industries fit that bill. So that's where we're up to now. And I'll finish there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Blows my mind every time. Jason, do you want to stay standing? Have we got any questions from the audience, please?
I've got two. First one is, can you just explain the link between with a smart contract when it comes to payments, and let's for example say that you and I make a contract and I loan you money and we facilitate that financial aspect and you can pay me on an ongoing basis in the future. What's the link between the smart contract and the actual payment? That's a bit I don't understand. I know that sometimes they do it with Ether tokens and some other crypto tokens, but how does it link to actual money? So how do I know that you're going to have money in your bank in another 2 years' time to facilitate those payments? That's the bit I don't get. That's the first question.
Yeah.
And the second one is, the start of cryptos, one of the beauties of it was the independence. There was no organisation behind it that could tinker, that could change the rules, could start putting fees on the transactions. And as we're moving the way that you said, with more regulation and the IP, and companies doing wanting to bring it back into their ownership, and to me that removes that element. So I no longer have the ability to have a blockchain app, which I know is not owned by anybody and is I've got confidence in it. Now I've got a blockchain app that's owned by a government that's trying to implement this, and therefore, to be honest, it's another database. Yes, it's blockchain technology, but it's a database with an app on top that's owned by the government. So
yeah. I'll address them in the reverse order. So, two things I didn't mention was the distinction between public and private blockchains. So, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Neo, EOS, etc. They're all what are called public blockchains. Now, what that means is that they're uneditable. That means that they're pure protocols that are just out there, and I can use them, you can use them. No one is controlling them. No one. The protocol is controlling them, right? So that's the ones we normally think of as that world. The other sort are private blockchains, and private blockchains are just essentially consortia of firms or governments that will come together and make an agreement to share a database called a blockchain. It's technically that's the difference between a blockchain and a distributed ledger technology, DLTs. Now, again, this isn't new. We've had these for a while. You know it as the SWIFT network in banking, or the sort of interoperable sort of things. Now, the thing about those ones is that they're editable. If everyone on the network agrees, we're going to change the entry, we're going to change an entry. The limit of that is the government. It just has the database, and you trust it or whatever. What I expect we'll see is some combination of all of these things stacked on top of each other. We'll use public blockchains when we need to trust something. By trust means I need to ensure that no one has edit rights on this thing, and we'll write things to that. The problem with these things is they're expensive and slow, and we can't put too much on them. The reason we like the consortia DLTs and so on is they're fast and quick moving. So what we're likely to see is basically a stack where the trust in the unwritability or the uneditability comes from putting some parts of it on a public blockchain. The institutional protocols will come from the use of particular private blockchains that are writing to these things. And what we've got there, but just to answer the question, what we've now got is, at the moment, when I make a legal contract in Australia, I have to use Australian law and Australian regulation. There's an institutional stack that isn't a choice for me. If I want to not choose that, I have to move to Singapore. Right? What this brings us is that choice. Is this ability to basically jurisdictionally shop for platforms. Now, I can, say, well, I'll just choose the easiest one or the one that's best for me, but I have to ensure that my counterparty also wants that one as well. So there's good reason why you'll choose a hard one, for the same reason that we might mutually agree to use a Swiss bank, not because their fees are low, but precisely because they are so hard to defraud and so on. So essentially, what we've now got is competition, I think, in this space, who haven't really previously had competition. And this is also what's emerging now in terms of a lot of the different platforms that are being built. What we've got is experiments in governance, in terms of what type of governance to write just the hardest one you can, to make the hardest money that is just absolutely uneditable, and once it's written, and that's Bitcoin. Right? And then you've got ones that are not quite as hard. This is something like EOS or Neo has these qualities. Right? Faster, cheaper, but not quite as hard. So we're likely to see, and this is the thing, this is the unknown. This is where different people and industries and consumer applications and so on, which combination of institutional qualities they will choose. Now, maybe everyone will converge upon the hardest possible thing. Just everyone will become Swiss in this sense. But it's not obvious that we all need that level of security. So I think this is part of the uncertainty that we've got. It's unclear what type of institutional protocols are required for which particular industries and applications. And we're likely just to see that as a sort of exercise in shopping. Now, what we don't have instead is this idea of a one-size-fits-all. Like, this is the rules here, either do it or don't do the thing. Right? So, I see just the economist in me sees that as a good thing. The problem is that there's going to be a lot of entrepreneurial discovery, a lot of mistakes will be made, a lot of people will choose the wrong platforms for the wrong things, and we'll realize that slowly. These are reasons not to move early, but to move later. But vice versa. Your first question around how do we ensure the smart contracts are what they say they are. There's two other words I didn't mention. One is oracles. An oracle is a device that pulls information from the real world onto a blockchain. Oracles are one of the key bits of infrastructure that we need for this to work. An example of an oracle might be a weather satellite saying, yes, there was a typhoon in that area, therefore the smart contract insurance payout happens. The Met Office is an oracle. So again, a lot of government functions are actually already, we don't call the Met Office, there it is, the oracle, but that's what it is. So there's still missing infrastructure on that. How do I know the money's there to get paid and so on? Again, that's still sort of missing commercial infrastructure in terms of counterparties willing to insure that object. So again, what we're likely to see, and this comes out of fintech, is basically a lot of what banks are doing, or in trade finance, is they're basically providing insurance. They're saying, you trust me, I statistically know their records, I know their records, I can bet that this is going to happen. If it doesn't happen, it's on me. Technically, that's an insurance contract they've written, not a surety. But the cost of doing that, I think, and the need for that to be a single party is likely to be less. But again, these are the entrepreneurial opportunities, and this is the reason we're likely to see an explosion of new business opportunities in this space, or new types of financial contracts being provided. It doesn't have to be the same firm that's providing in both cases.
Anybody else have any questions? Please.
You spoke about like 35% of EV efficiency, 30%. What this sort of says to me is that how robots are taking over the physical world. Now you have this technology taking over the services, the clerks, the lawyers, lots of people who are currently employed in government, local government, or other services business. So what will these people be doing when the other part will be that yes, it increases global trade, but people have to have money to purchase from one country to another. If they don't have jobs, they don't have that.
So I spend a lot of time talking to accountants and lawyers about this. I tell them this is the best thing that has ever happened to your profession. What it means is not we don't need accountants or administrators or lawyers anymore. What it means is that the accountants, administrators, and lawyers that we have will be doing different things. And in essence, it's like architects before CAD and after CAD, right? The boring, routine parts of the job will disappear. That's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. Anything that can be done in software and automated to protocols will be automated to protocols. That's where the cost savings come from. What happens, though, is because we've just done this, because the cost of building ledgers and and registries has fallen, and we've moved a lot more assets to these things. So at the moment, we build ledgers basically for the big things: land, houses. We keep track of big, expensive, slow-moving things. If the cost of building these registries and creating digital assets that are written to blockchains and able to be transferred falls, we'll move more stuff to them. Now, a facile example is we'll put our toaster on it and we'll put all of our sort of spoons on it and whatever. But there'll be a lot more digital assets, orders of magnitude more digital assets in the world that will be now part of the global trading system. That means a lot more work keeping track of these things. Now, in one sense, the technology itself is part of how we keep track of that. But in the same way that once upon a time, accountants and lawyers were expensive services that you only provided to expensive things. Companies used them. Most humans didn't. Most people didn't. We're likely to see the smart contract lawyering design, strategic and forensic accounting and this accounting services basically become far more democratized. I see this as an explosion of the use of accountants in the world and lawyers and so on. But they're doing design work. They're doing strategic work. They're not doing auditing and verification, just checking that the ledgers are what they say they are type of stuff, which is good, right? That's the boring part of the job. But this is where the value creation comes from, is that you've now got skilled people doing work for more people.
Couldn't get a word out, could I?
Yeah, just one quick one. Jason, what you've spoken about a lot is, in sort of my mind, an anarchistic globalisation phenomenon. And given the pushback that we've seen in the last 2 years, particularly from the Trump administration against globalisation, what kind of pushback are you going to expect from nation states who don't see this as actually being in their interests?
In a lot of ways, there are clear losers from this. And the clear losers from this are those that benefit from a regime in which control of those ledgers is political control or control over a population, obviously. I sort of see this as the main issue right now. This is what this actually does to geopolitics. Now, this is not a by December we need to worry about this problem, but this is coming. Right? This will reshape geopolitical orders, because what it is doing is reshaping trade orders and the way in which trade takes place. So the good news, however, is what this does is it fundamentally separates out citizens from nation states. And that was exactly what Bitcoin was designed to do. It was designed to mean, if I've got value, I can move it outside of a repressive regime without the repressive regime blocking me at the border. That was literally what Bitcoin was used for in Venezuela, for people getting money out of Russia, for people getting money out of Iran, to stop repressive regimes. They could stop the physical person at the border, but they couldn't stop the value moving out. So previously gold served that role. We could smuggle gold or diamonds or whatever, right? So on the one hand that, but now we can extend it not just to abstract value transfer, but to asset transfer. I can prove who I am, right? What's the proving who you are problem? That's the refugee problem globally. And I've got ownership of this land and I can prove it, or I've got ownership of these assets, whatever. So, in one sense, it's a huge threat to those that benefit that. But it's also a huge opportunity. And we're doing a lot of work with Red Cross right now, who see this technology as essentially a way to create proof of identity, proof of ownership, proof of just to create sort of deep, untamperable, and this is where you want it hard, this is where you want the hardest possible version of a ledger, that no matter how big and how powerful the repressive regime is, it can't touch it. So super strong ledgers, Bitcoin grade ledgers are the ones you want for establishing identity of people trying to escape that. So this is a huge story we could go on for a long time, but I see that was the original intention of this technology, was to provide a infrastructure, a weapons-grade infrastructure for citizens to fight back against repressive regimes. It's turned out we can also use it for putting cows on the internet and selling them in China. But I think that there's a lot of implications there that extend well beyond the commercial corporate space, which is mostly what we're talking about today. Yeah.
So I'm not taking more questions because we're running out of time, so please put your hands together for Justin. So guys, I'm aware that we're slightly behind the call, but only because I think the topic itself is just so fascinating. Couple of things, we'll just do two more things if you could bear with us. The first one is DEBA results itself. We have formed a partnership with RMIT, we did that earlier this year, really to actually build blockchain applications that serve our society, or build an empire, whichever way you want to put it. We've chosen specifically health, where we see the greatest benefit to our society, and really about the decentralization of health data, which was touched on earlier. We've actually did a proof of concept. We brought together the use of our digital methodology, our OutSystems platform, blockchain using Ethereum and the intelligence of the RMIT guys. And within 3 weeks, we developed a health wallet. And it's something that's a proof of concept, but in 3 weeks. So the point about this is it's really quick and it's right there, and we can do it with you if you want us to. Finally, we've also won an award from the Victorian government with RMIT to further develop these sorts of applications. So it is happening, and companies like ourselves can help people get involved in them. That's my sales pitch. The thing I'd like to do now is ask Andrew Dean, our CEO, to come up and just say a few words. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks very much, and I realise we're running over time, so I will be quick, and I know people won't believe it, but I'll do that. So firstly, thanks a lot to Professor Jason Potts for coming in once again and enlightening us around blockchain. For us, we've been running this Digital Insight series over the last 18 months, maybe even 2 years, and I think, being able to share around innovation, what's happening in the marketplace and where things are going is something we really enjoy doing. But we'll probably take it down a slightly different path as we move forward over the next 12, 18 months, where we incorporate some of the other things around design thinking, speedathons, things we can do, out systems, offshore development centres, where we try and include you in what we're doing in these type sessions. So some of them may be at the end of the day rather than the start of the day. But we really want to bring you along on the journey on the things that we're getting to do around innovation, because we think there's a lot of value that can be delivered. And I sit here listening today and I go, my health record, who's opted out, why are people opting out, security, that type of thing. And we're sitting there with concepts of health wallet and what we've been doing. So there's a lot that can be done, and I think it's a really exciting time. And we enjoy sharing the innovation, dealing with companies like RMIT, and we look forward to sharing that journey with you. And that's it. I think I was done in about 2 minutes, so I'll take it and pause there.